You're listening to Thunder and Lightning on SuperTalk Mississippi, covering Mississippi State sports like nobody else. With Sports Talk Mississippi's Brian Hadad and Robbie Faulk of On3 Sports. Now get ready for Thunder and Lightning.
It's Thunder and Lightning here on SuperTalk Mississippi. Brian Hadad and Robbie Faulk here with you on a Tuesday morning. Thanks for joining us here at supertalk.fm or wherever it is that you get podcasts from. We appreciate you guys out there, our great listeners, especially our servicemen and women out there taking care of us. We want to thank our sponsors over at Strange Brew Coffee House and Churn and Spoon Ice Cream. Start your day the right way with a trip to the drive-thru over at Strange Brew Coffee House here in Starkville or at Brupolo over in Tupelo. It'd be a little weird, Robbie, if Brupolo was an eagle's nest.
That would be a little weird.
Wherever you are in our great state, you can enjoy a Strange Brew coffee each and every morning. It's just a click away at strangebrewcoffeehouse.com. The Mississippi Beef Council wants to remind you that beef, it is what's for dinner. Whenever you're cooking out, nothing beats the sizzle of beef on the grill. If you're looking for a great weeknight dinner idea, beef makes it easy. It's easy to cook. It's delicious. It's nutritious. And there are just so many options for you at the grocery store each and every day. Talk to your butchers and your meat market guys. They'll take care of you with the best specials and the best cuts. Beef, it's what's for dinner, thanks to our friends at the Mississippi Beef Council. College Corner, collegecornerstore.com. That's the place to find the maroon and white merchandise that you're looking for. If you are a Mississippi State fan, you need new gear coming up this football season. You need to go to College Corner. They got all the logos that you want, all the name brands, and all the cool stuff that you can only find at College Corner. College Corner, 2 locations in the Jackson area, Ridgeland by Fleet Feet, Florida by the Half Shell, or you can shop online, collegecornerstore.com. Restaurant Tyler is Starkville's flagship restaurant for lunch, dinner, Sunday brunch. The best meal in town is always going to be at Restaurant Tyler. We love a lunch at Restaurant Tyler. We love catfish. We love fried chicken. But we love other stuff, too. It's all right there at Restaurant Tyler. They got the best options, meats, veggies, great cornbread. If you want to have a lunch in the city of Starkville, the best place to do it is always going to be Restaurant Tyler. Priority One Bank, 16 locations to serve you throughout central Mississippi. Let PriorityOneBank.com be your guide to show you not only how they're going to help you invest and manage your money, but help you prepare for the future. Now more than ever, you need questions about your, really, now more than ever, when you got questions about your money, you need answers. You need them quickly on your schedule. You can't afford to wait around. You need to talk to a bank that provides a level of service that you're only going to find at Priority One Bank. Let Priority One Bank make you their priority. I was just discussing with young Mr. Faulk here that this time next week, he will probably be a father of 2.
Correct.
I think we should have the exclusive announcement of the gender of your child here on the podcast. I think you should not put it on social media of any kind. We'll have you on the show. You hold the baby up, and you're like, it's a whatever. I think that's what we should do. I think we could get some content for that.
Well, that's not going to happen, but it's a nice thought. But my wife is in charge of those decisions.
I mean, she's going to be on the table. What's she going to do if you run out of there with the baby? Be like, real quick, I got to record.
I think I'm going to run out of the building with my 2-hour-old child to the radio station.
We will set up a podcast area in the waiting room, and we'll have you taken care of.
Hey, I mean, you can try that.
I'm just saying. I
don't know if anybody's going to sign off on that at the hospital or whatever, but yeah, you can try it.
We'll get them an advertising deal. It'll be fine. All right. So yeah, so next week Robbie might be out for a couple of days. He's got new dad duty, but we'll worry about that when we get there. We'll talk some basketball a little later in the show. As Mississippi State has finally gotten involved in the transfer portal. Immediately, all we had to do was record something about it, Robbie, and they did it and then made our podcast irrelevant. Great job.
I did think that they were going to have some good news either Monday or Tuesday.
Well, they got ahead of the curve.
And I'm glad they went ahead and did it because I kind of got tired of the, what are we doing post and all that. So,
Well, we'll start with football. And of course, now it's so fun. 10 years ago, the early enrollee was like a new thing, right? Guys, all these high school kids, they're leaving school a little early, and maybe you had 1 or 2 guys as early enrollees. Now you have sometimes half of your signing class as freshmen come in as early enrollees. And of course, you have the transfer portal. And so every spring, is about new faces. I feel like, it used to be spring practice was about new faces, but you knew those players, right? You were talking about which freshmen are going to be better as sophomores and which sophomores are ready to take that big step as a junior. Now it's about, hey, this guy hasn't been here before. So Robbie and I are going to give you some guys that we think will be big time additions for Mississippi State this year. Guys who will their impact will be noticeable of the new faces. And we'll start with this though. I expect a bunch of transfer guys here. Is there a true freshman that you could see making a big impact for Mississippi State in year one?
I mean, probably the guy that stands out the most there would probably be Tyler Lockhart. That was one of your jewels of the class. It's not a super deep position, at least from players that you feel really good about, I guess. So that would probably be a guy up there for me. Now, I haven't heard he hasn't been a guy just yet that's been jumping off the page, but it's still spring. And a lot can happen now in the next few months. So we'll see how that goes. But that's probably that'd be a guy like towards the top of the list for me. And then, I mean, obviously, if something happens with Blake Shapen, Kamario Taylor is the obvious answer there. I think that he's perfectly capable of competing for that starting spot at quarterback. I like Luke Kromenhawk. I think Kamario Taylor's ceiling is higher, and he has really impressed in the first few weeks of spring. Physically, he's there. I think from a weight room perspective, that has been a seamless transition. It's just going to be whether or not he picks up the offense quick enough, and does Blake Shapen stay healthy. But those would be that'd be probably my 1A, 1B, and I would probably give Lockhart a little bit of an edge just because it might be easier for him to get on the field, whether it be special teams, doing something similar to what Stonka Burnside did last year, or if he starts to get playing time in his position at linebacker. Also, a guy that I've heard a lot about lately that might slip in and be a little bit of a surprise is A.J. Rice. Just from a physical standpoint, he's 6'1", about 240, built like a rock, a guy that's really impressed physically early on. I like the physicality that they brought in with these freshmen. That this is a much bigger group of early enrollees than they had a season ago. And so that's kind of the grouping I would look at: Lockhart, Kamario Taylor, and A.J. Rice.
Mm-hmm. And another guy, and Tyshawn Willis is a guy who, if he were here, I think might be making more of an impact, but he is not an early enrollee. I'm going to give you another name, and I haven't heard anything about him, but that cornerback position is so up for grabs at Mississippi State. The 4-star kid from Kyle Johnson. That just in terms of they need somebody to step up there. They need someone to do it. Could it be a youngster? I mean, it feels like of all the positions on the field, cornerback is the one where a freshman could come in day one and at least have some opportunities. Now, I don't know if he's physically ready for that. You look at it, 0-3 lists him at 5'11", 160. I'm going to make an assumption that over a 8-month period, he can put on 10, 15 pounds of muscle, but he'll still be undersized at that point. But I just wonder, in terms of opportunities, the cornerback position has got to be one where there's going to be somebody there that we don't expect that steps up.
And the height and weight that might not have been changed in a while too. So I don't know. I haven't seen him since last summer, so I don't know where he is right now. But yeah, that's a position group that is like a total unknown for me right now. I don't know what to expect from them, and I don't have high expectations.
Yeah.
But, you are getting a lot of coaching from Paul Rhodes that should help. Just haven't been super impressed with Corey Bell on the field or in recruiting right now, but I think Paul Rhodes will help. It's baffling that they didn't really improve that group that much in the offseason.
Mm-hmm.
That should have been a major priority for them, and it didn't look like they went out and got a lot of talent to come in and compete. And maybe their hands were tied. Maybe they didn't have any interest from players. I don't know, but they just did not do a very good job of building that room after last season. So, and losing Bryce Pollock was huge. I mean, that would have been a big piece to bring back. If Mississippi State would have been able to bring him back this year, the questions wouldn't have been as loud. You still wouldn't have had a lot of depth, but you would like your top two right there, probably him and Kelly Jones at that point. So, yeah, that could be a guy that sees the field early. That was a big get for State to get him from Houston late in the process and bring him in. I think he can help Mississippi State, if not this year, in the near future.
Who of the receivers that State brought in, who is the guy you think that's this year's Kevin Coleman? That's the guy that I want to circle and say 75 catches, 900 yards, 7 touchdowns. Who is that guy for you?
I hate to put that much on him, but I think Anthony Evans is going to probably be that.
I don't feel like you're putting that much on him because offense every year there's one guy who does it, so you just got to make a prediction.
It is. It's just the fact that he hasn't done it yet.
Yeah,
and you're asking him to do. But I think this offense is going to afford him a ton of more opportunities. We talked so much about Mike Bobo's offense, and I just don't think that those opportunities were there for him, and it was pretty crowded. I think he has enough skill to him that they're going to put him in position to make a lot of plays. Kevin Coleman didn't have a ton of receptions in his first in his year at Louisville. I think he had maybe 20 catches, something like that. And then he comes to Mississippi State and just became kind of a budding star, almost at 1,000 yards receiving. This could be kind of an eye-opening year for him. It could be a year where you finally find, an opportunity for him to put his skill set out there and do some big things. And like you said, I mean, they've done this with a guy every year that Jeff Lebby's been coaching. I think Brennan Thompson's going to be able to make some plays for you as well. We'll see Aiden Williams. My early leader there in the clubhouse, though, is Anthony Evans. I think he has a chance to be a breakout star for State. The skill set is really good. This is a fairly simplistic offense for a wide receiver at that position. So that's my guy. That's my guy I think is going to have a big year.
I'm in agreement with you. I think that, if you said pick one of them, he's the I think he's kind of the obvious choice, to be totally honest with you. And then
Akari was kind of like the obvious choice last year, and
so makes you wonder. Then I still think if Akari hadn't gotten hurt at the beginning, I think that just threw him off the rest of the year. If he had been able to come into the season healthy, I think he might have had a little.
Probably so, but also the slot. Like I feel like the slot position is where all the action is.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, that's you look at his time at Ole Miss. That's where Elijah Moore was lined up. That's where Drake Stoops was lined up at Oklahoma when he had 84 catches for them. Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. The slot, and that's where Anthony Evans is probably going to be. On the outside, Marcus Allen, Jerron Glover. Could either one of those guys, Cam Thompson, could any one of those guys, again, I mean, just give you more. Yeah, could one of those guys be a little bit more than what Akari was last year? Be a 50-catch guy?
Yeah, I think they can. I'm intrigued with what happens on the outside because nobody seems to be really like separating themselves. I mean, I think Aiden Williams has been one that's been talked about a lot, but there's just not a whole lot of conversation being had in the circles that I talk to about those other players. And I think that kind of matches the thoughts when those guys signed. Is like,
agreed.
They weren't guys that really bounced off the page for you, but maybe it translates in this offense. I don't know. I think Aiden Williams can have a good season. I think Brennan Thompson can do good things for you. I think Anthony Evans can do good things for you. It's a good solid nucleus. Jordan Mosley. But the other guys, I'm just going to have to see it first. So far, I just haven't. I don't know.
Yeah.
We haven't been able to watch anything, so I can't
That's the main
physically
thing. Yeah.
tell you. It's all based on what I see in a 30-second clip that or maybe not even that long. What do I see in a 12-second clip by Mississippi State football, and then what am I seeing in drills? And I mean, I'm not a scout. I can't look at someone's footwork and tell you that's going to be a 1,000-yard receiver or something like that. I can't tell those things in some of these drills. So I need to see it. I need to see some one-on-one action with, Aiden Williams versus Kelly Jones or something like that. And you see some scrimmaging. We don't get to see any of that. So that's what makes all of this so difficult to really kind of break down. We're just kind of guessing.
On the offensive line, is there a guy? I mean, I think you and I are in agreement that Jesse Ramel is going to be a likely starter for this Mississippi State team, at maybe one of the tackle spots. But then you look, Carson Lee coming from Eastern Michigan, Kobe Keenum making the trip over from Kentucky, Trevor Mayberry, a late addition to the class coming in from Stanford. At least one more of those guys is probably going to be in that first starting five, wouldn't you think?
I think that you got to talk about Saquon Miles in there on the offensive line,
recruit,
junior college. Carson Lee, I think, has a chance to start or at least compete at the center position. I think Ramel has a chance to compete. Shumpert has a chance to compete coming out of JUCO. Mm-hmm. Luke Work and Jimothy Lewis, I think those guys both have the ability to start at either of the tackle positions. I think Luke Work has a chance to start at left tackle. I think Jimothy Lewis at right tackle. Albert Reese has not played this spring. He's recovering from an injury. So you still got him as well. But this is still a wide open position at this point. I mean, the group as a whole. I mean, there is a lot of competition being had. And I don't know, how that ends up coming around. I know that they want to get more players to add depth to this group. I don't think they're totally pleased with the offensive line. I don't think that's anything to right now freak out about because you have so many new faces and they're getting used to it. Those guys can get better and they can get more comfortable. So that is that certainly it could be a little early. Jacoby Jackson should be competing for a starting spot in the middle. Cannon Boone's competing for a starting spot, probably at guard or center. There's a lot of guys out there. Trevor Mayberry coming over from Stanford. We just we got to let it play out.
Defensively, obviously, is where we're going to see the majority of these new faces needing to make that year one impact. And I guess we'll start on the defensive line. The name that everybody keeps throwing out is Will Whitson, the transfer from Coastal Carolina. When he committed to Mississippi State, there was basically a thought of this is what one of the big pieces State was lacking last year, a space eater in the middle, somebody who can command a double team, somebody who can bring pressure directly up the middle and help collapse things inside. This is the one you talked about earlier, but you didn't want to put the pressure on a receiver. This is a guy that Mississippi State absolutely has to be good. If he's not good, it's going to screw a lot of things up.
Yeah, because you just don't have the interior. You don't have the. I guess you have more than you did last year, but you still don't feel great about the depth. You feel a little bit better. Dinkins is who knows if he's going to be ready to play and if he's going to stay healthy. So you need guys like Rasheem Thomas and Will Whitson to hit. Mm-hmm. You need Travion Williams to hit that next level. These guys, the guys that are already here, that have been here, they've got to be better. But these guys they brought in have got to be really good. And we'll see. We'll see if they're able to do that. But we saw Deron Reed made a big play. I think it was Bledsoe, Gerard Bledsoe. That made a big play in the scrimmage the other day. Kai McClendon's back this year. Will Whitson, I think that was kind of your big get out of the portal. Mm-hmm. moving him in the mix with the guys that you have returning, I think, is only a good thing. But this is a big jump for him going from Coastal Carolina to the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what my expectations are for him, but he's a nice sized kid, 6'5", 300 pounds almost. You've added a lot of size to the defensive line. You look like a defensive line in the SEC now.
Yeah.
That was not the case last year. This team was not good up front, and a lot of that is on the previous staff and some of that on this staff too for not having the players. But this group looks a lot more like a SEC defensive line than the last one. They have the numbers and they have the size. And Will Whitson's one of those guys that kind of adds to that nucleus that I think should be pretty solid for you this year, at least a lot better than it was last year.
You talk about a three-man front. There's a good chance that the starting three in that first game are all transfers, and Whitson, maybe Red Hibbler at one of those positions, and maybe Rasheem Thomas or Nevaeh Sanders at one of those positions. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that first name correctly. My apologies if not. It's very possible that that's your starting defensive line. You mentioned McClendon and Williams being back. We'll see. Yeah, I'm not going to go get on board with the Trevion Williams again. I'll get on board if something happens. I'm going to wait that out. But
wait and see.
As far as new faces go, great chance there. And then at the linebacker position, I think we both expect Jalen Smith to be a starter for Mississippi State. What about a guy like Malik Silla coming over from Texas A&M? State desperately needs a pass rusher, somebody who can get after the quarterback. Could he be that guy? At least it feels like he's going to get that opportunity at least.
At the very least, you need him to be kind of a third down rusher, a guy that can get after the quarterback and specialty downs. I don't know if he's an every down linebacker for you, but you at least would like to see that. I think Brandon Jennings is still going to be a major piece for you at that spot. And then, who knows what we see from Isaac Smith as far as linebackers concerned. I think he's been playing a lot more linebacker. At least he's going to be playing a little more in the box. I don't know how often he will be part of that crew there, but I think you will see him in the box to kind of aid them there.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like you said, I think Smith is going to be a huge addition. That could be a guy that can really help you take a step forward at the linebacker spot. But yeah, the guy from Texas A&M as a pass rushing specialist, that's kind of what you need this year. You've got to get more pressure on the quarterback. This was one of the worst seasons I've ever seen at Mississippi State at pressuring the quarterback last year. And the numbers were just sickly. I mean, I never expected that from Mississippi State. They have got to be infinitely better at that spot, and they can easily do that. But it needs to be more than just you're better than you were a year ago. This needs to be a much better pass rushing team, and it starts at that linebacker spot. You got several guys there that need to get after the quarterback and finish plays.
So Silla, I'm just looking at this list here of guys. You mentioned Bledsoe. Had it looks like a fumble return for a touchdown. We don't know for sure what it was, but him and Darian Gillette, both coming over from Texas, maybe you can hope they could make some sort of impact. When you go into the secondary, I feel really good about Jerron Manning, the transfer from Old Dominion. I feel really good about Tony Mitchell, the recruit from EMCC, who was one of those kids who, I think he was a 5-star coming out of high school and, runs into some legal trouble at Alabama and ends up at EMCC. State's had such good success with guys like that in the past. I think immediately of Montez Sweat and Jonathan Abram right off the top of my head. So I'm hopeful he can be a guy who can come in right away. The guy that I'm the most intrigued by, and this is a guy, again, you mentioned don't want to put pressure on guys, but I mean, what are we doing? We got to talk about it. If Dwight Lewis is actually a really good football player, if State scout on this guy is correct and he can make a jump from NAIA to the SEC, then you might have something there. But that's another one right there where I don't know. I want to see what you talked about Whitson making it. I mean, it's a jump from Coastal Carolina to the SEC, no question about it. It's 10 times the jump from the NAIA level to the SEC. What do you expect from Dwight Lewis in year one?
Well, he's a freaky athlete. I mean,
Yeah.
he's 6'1", almost 200 pounds. He's got good athleticism too at that spot. It's just, how does he translate to this level? That's the big question. That there are some good athletes in that cornerback room. Kelly Jones can move well at 6'4". And you know, he can make plays for you there. Diego Broomfield, I think, is the fastest guy on the team, and you know, we'll see what he's able to do. That the group returning didn't do a whole lot last year, so you're either banking on them being much better this year, or you need these guys that weren't highly recruited coming out of the transfer portal or JUCO to hit. Javen Williams, Dwight Lewis, obviously. Very intriguing guy is Lewis, but I just got to see him on the field first. I got to see him. I got to see him do something. So that's the big thing. But he's obviously had the attention of a lot of people early in
Yeah.
spring practice. It just depends on you know, how he translates that to the field come fall.
And then the guy we didn't mention is the guy that I think is the most obvious choice on both sides of the ball to have a breakout year one, and that's Fluff Bothwell. I will be pretty surprised if he is not between 600 and 800 yards rushing next year. You know, again, because they're going to platoon him with Booth, and Daniels will get carries as well. So it's just going to be, you know, limited. I don't think he can be 1,000-yard rusher for Mississippi State, but I will be really surprised if he is not one of the better running backs in the SEC in year one.
Yeah, and a guy that you get to the 1 yard line, 2 yard line. I feel good about State punching that in, and there were times last year where they kind of struggled with that. So this is a good piece to have, and give them the ball in between the tackles and just let them roll right on through. The running back situation is really good for Mississippi State because you feel like you can put any of those three, and then I could put Xavier Gayton in there for a situation. And I think he could get a big play out of it. But the top three that you got there with Davon Booth, Johnny Daniels, and Fluff, all those guys at any point can get you 5-6 yards a carry. And
Which
I
game was
think
it
that's
last
a
year,
good
Robbie?
situation.
What game was it last year where State got stuffed inside the five twice? Was that A&M?
I know they did it against Florida, I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Um,
That's the series where Shapen gets hurt.
and you score right there, and I think it's down to 10 or it's down to a
You're back in
touchdown
the
or
game a little
something.
bit. Yeah.
Instead, you don't score, and then Florida, I think, went down the field and scored. That was a
I
huge
think
possession.
it happened against A&M too, where
They might have done that against Ole Miss
Ole
in the
Miss.
fourth quarter. They had a chance to score. They were like inside the 5, and I don't think they scored.
Yeah, you're right. That's the one where Coleman went out at the 1. It looked like he scored, but he went out at the 1, and they ended up throwing a pick, didn't they?
I don't remember, but I remember
but you're
saying,
right.
I remember saying when he didn't score, they will not
We
score.
were both there like no chance. It's over.
Yeah,
We've
seen that.
We've seen
I've
the
seen that
movie.
my entire life.
I've seen the movie. So a lot of new faces, but a lot of opportunity for Mississippi State. Right now, when you look at State's starting lineup, if you were to try to draw up a starting 22, I mean, you might have at least half of that new faces, right? At least.
A lot of new faces.
Yeah.
They did bring back some key players at certain positions, but they needed to get a lot of new faces.
They did.
This roster needed an overhaul. I talked to somebody the other day. I was told him, you know, that to me, one of the biggest signs that this roster was not good last year is the fact you had not a single player go to the NFL Combine. I mean, almost everybody gets somebody going to the Combine. Mississippi State did not. That tells you something. And it's not just that Mississippi State was young last year. It tells you they just didn't have the talent.
Yeah.
So they lost some big pieces they needed to keep. I thought Kevin Coleman was a huge loss. I thought Bryce Pollock was a huge loss. You know, you can argue Mario Craver, but he's having some troubles over at A&M too. But Coleman and Pollock especially were big losses for Mississippi State. Everything else, I don't think anybody's really truly upset about most of that roster that left. They needed to push some guys out and probably needed to push a few more. out, but they're still around. We'll see what this roster looks like this year, but I think it's going to be a more competitive roster by SEC terms.
When I look at this roster, the main thing I think, and I've mentioned it a few times, from a depth perspective, they're 100% better than they were a season ago. They have some real depth there. They need, if I could, Bothwell, I'm kind of counting on, right? But if Evans and pick one more of those receivers, I don't care which one you pick. And then on the defensive side of the ball, if Whitson and Smith and Manning and Mitchell are all difference makers, well, now we've got something there. Now we can talk in legitimate terms about being a bowl team at Mississippi State. So they just need a few guys to be a little better than maybe I think they're going to be here in April. Now, so I have pretty high expectations for Smith. I think he's going to be good. I have high expectations for Manning. So maybe I should say a Dwight Lewis or a Kyle Johnson, one of those corners. But State, the margins from State being much better and not being good at all are very thin here. It feels like it's one or two players on either side of the ball. If they're just a little better, they're going to be really good this year. So we'll see. We'll see. Plenty to talk about as we get closer to the spring game now, 12 days away. All right, let's move into the rest of the show. That's brought to you by our friends over at Two Brothers Smoked Meats in the heart of the Cotton District, the place to find smoked Southern soul food. The best. I've always loved Two Brothers wings. I'm a wing guy, a wing aficionado, if you will.
Connoisseur, if you will.
Thank you. But so I've always loved their smoked wings. Now that I can get I can get the sauces on there. I can't describe it. I'm going to go eat there at least twice this week. I'll just go ahead and tell you. I will be there tomorrow. Today is do they do Wing Wednesday? I'm gonna go Wednesday. They do a special on wings, so I'm gonna get some wings on Wednesday.
I would like to go with you at some point this week.
My friend, you just have to say the word, and I will be there. Knock, and the door shall be opened unto you.
True.
Or if you want to go get a fancy sandwich, we can do that as well. We can head over to the Older Brother. Both of them right there in the Cotton District. Two fantastic places for lunch and for dinner. We love a trip to Two Brothers and the Older Brother. Great products, great service. Every business wants to promise it to you. They deliver it to you at Advantage Business Systems, and they've been doing it for 50 years. 50! All right. When you need technology for your business.
Sound the alarm.
Ramming speed. When you need technology for your business, if you need a new copy or a new printer, new computers, whatever that is, Advantage Business Systems, they've got the products, but most importantly, they back it up with service after the sale. You're talking to the same people who made you the sale. You're not calling a call center. You're not dealing with a technician from another state. It's all right there, easily done at Advantage Business Systems. Give them a call today, 601-362-9192, or visit them online at absms.com. By now, Advantage Business Systems will help your business do business. Next time you're in Starkville, if you need MSU gear, the place to go is Maroon & Co. Maroon & Co. has the biggest selection, the best selection in the city of Starkville. Everywhere else, they're playing for second. Maroon & Co. has got that taken care of. Whatever you're looking for, maroon and white, it's under one roof at Maroon & Co. Use our promo code to save you some money. Thunder15 is 15% off regular price for in-store or online at maroonandco.com. Whatever you're looking for, Mississippi State, they can help you find it. They've got it at Maroon & Co.
Curtain, 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 curtain. Curtain, 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 curtain.
Been a little while since we played that song here on Thunder and Lightning, but we are back at it, and the basketball transfer. So this is all we need. Mississippi State fans, whatever you guys want, if you can tell us a day before, we'll record a podcast where we say, yeah, Mississippi State doesn't have this. And then it will happen. So, like, next year, if you want to, yeah, Mississippi State certainly does not have the Golden Egg Trophy. We'll record that the day of the Egg Bowl.
Well, Mississippi State doesn't have a national championship in football. So,
and then we'll say that, and then it will. There you go. All right.
Let's just keep speaking that into existence.
Do the best we can. First transfer portal commitment for Chris Jans in the 25-26 cycle. A guard from the University of Alabama, Birmingham, which means you realize what that means, right?
The state got somebody from the University of Alabama.
No.
But it's in Birmingham.
He played for AK.
Yes, Winston County native.
There you go. Jabori McGee is the name. Jabori McGee is a Mississippi native, originally from the Macomb area. Moves to Alabama, ends up at UAB, now headed to Mississippi State. This is a guy who can shoot the basketball. He can put the ball in the hoop at a higher rate than Mississippi State has seen in the past couple of years. But the general consensus on this guy is that Mississippi State is bringing him in as kind of a sixth-man type player. Because he plays Hubbard's position, basically. So they're not expecting him to be the starter for Mississippi State. But if this is the kind of player I can get on the bench, you got to be happy with that addition.
Yeah, a guy that is real. The don't let the size fool you. 6'1", 205, so he's kind of like a stocky build, but really athletic and really consistent. I mean, if you look at his stats, 52% from the field at the guard position is very, very good.
Very good.
And it was a really good three-point shooter as well. JUCO guy coming out, kind of under the radar guy. I think he played his high school basketball in Alabama, from Macomb originally, but AK, a really good evaluator of talent. He likes the JUCO ranks too. This is a dude that shot 41%. From 3-point range last year. That'll play. I mean, if you got this guy coming off the bench, he defends the three well. He can score at all three levels. You got this guy coming off the bench. If this is one of your bench players, sign me up. I really like this pickup. He is a 69% free throw shooter.
Nice. That's a
low
for a guard. That's a low number though for a guy who shoots that kind who shoots that kind of numbers from the field and from the 3-point line. To be a 69% free throw shooter is odd. You would think he'd be closer to 75 or so, but regardless.
Odd. Yeah. But, he does everything else good enough. I think this is a really good pickup for State as a bench player. Now, this isn't a guy that I would want right now in the starting lineup. But if you're bringing this off the bench to give you to spell some minutes here, give you 16, 18 minutes, whatever, this is a really good pickup. He's a spot-up shooter. He can really hit it.
Yeah.
I like it. And he was really good late in the season.
You're basically hoping that he can be what you were hoping Claudel Harris could be. Harris came in as a 35% three-point shooter, and you're like, great, that's exactly what State needs. And he didn't reach those numbers. This guy at 41, 42%, great. I'll settle for 35%. You can be 10% or 7% lower, and we'd still be in good shape bringing a guy like that in. So, yeah, this is a great addition, especially from a depth perspective. That State, a guy who can basically what this guy gives you is when Hubbard's off the court, you still have a good 3-point threat out there at the 2 position. That's how I'm going to look at this. So,
yeah.
And
you're just trying to upgrade your whole roster. I mean, you want to get deeper.
Exactly.
You want to get back to defending. I think this guy does defend, and you just got to you just got to make the whole roster better. Yeah. And last year's roster, I don't think was good enough.
So you mentioned you thought they'd get some good news when we were recording yesterday, and you thought it would be later in the week. So do you think there's more to come this week?
I do. I think they'll have some names pop up this week, and hopefully some commitments as well. But it's so fluid, man. I've never covered recruiting, and Paul does most of this, but I'm following it closely with Paul and talking to sources myself. But I've never covered recruiting anything like what's happening in the transfer portal right now, and it's been that way for the last couple of years. But from day to day, things change with so much fluidity. It's hard to know what direction things are going, and new names pop up. They come and go. It's insane. People come in for visits. You think you're about to lock it down, and they end up going somewhere else. It's very difficult to cover. It's very difficult to nail down right now, and there's so much information coming in. It's hard to keep up.
That's why we have you, Robbie. That's why we subscribe to that On3 website.
That's true. We have a thread for this reason.
Mm-hmm.
We have a transfer portal thread that is closing in on 200,000 views and 113 pages at this point.
200,000. That's chump change.
It is chump change for
a million on the
football.
On the football one. So,
I do not think we'll get to the football number of 1 million plus, but it's going to be a hefty thread.
Oh, I know all about that. So.
Hefty.
Wimpy. All right. So I couldn't resist. You said it. I had to follow it up. All right. Tomorrow's show is the rumblings. You know what to do. Get the questions in when we shall answer them. And we'll go from there. Guys, have a great Tuesday. Back with you on Wednesday. For Robbie Faulk, I'm Brian Hadad. Thanks for listening to Thunder and Lightning here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.